Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you to the Asia-Pacific Commemoration of International Women's Day 2020 under the global theme, I Am Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights. Before our program begins, we invite you to watch a short informational video on the coronavirus disease. As you are aware, the World Health Organization has declared the COVID-19 outbreak as a public health emergency of international concern. While the emphasis of this decision is on global measures to control the outbreak, individuals can contribute by following the advice to think global, act local. We urge all attendees to follow the guidance provided in this video. These measures are for your safety and to safeguard the well-being of us all. Thank you.
Good day. I am Dr. Teolisa Almendras, the UN Medical Doctor for Bangkok. Welcome to the United Nations Conference Center. This is a brief announcement with regards to the novel coronavirus and some precautionary measures we would like to share with all participants attending meetings at the UNCC. What is the novel coronavirus? Coronaviruses are a large family of viruses that cause illness ranging from the common cold to severe diseases such as Middle East Respiratory Syndrome and severe acute respiratory syndrome. A novel coronavirus is a new strain that has not been previously identified in humans. Common signs of the 2019 novel coronavirus infection include respiratory symptoms, cough, fever, shortness of breath, and breathing difficulties. In case you're experiencing any of the symptoms, please contact the UN Medical Center, who are located on the ground floor of this building, or first aid team if your organizers arrange a standby ambulance and first aid team for your meeting. Detailed information about the virus and necessary precautions to take are being circulated on the screens throughout the building, and we are also providing a QR code at the end of this message, as well as in other areas of the building where this information can be downloaded. Here's a quick guide from the WHO on how to reduce your risk to coronavirus infection. We thank you for your attention.
Thank you. May I now please draw your attention to the video message from Mr. Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations, on the occasion of International Women's Day 2020.
Gender equality is fundamentally a question of power. Transforming the balance of power is essential, not only as a question of human rights, personal development, health and well-being. It is critical to solving some of the most damaging and intractable problems of our age, from ridiculing of women as hysterical or hormonal, to the routine judgment of women based on their looks, from the myths and taboos that surround women's natural body functions, to mansplaining and victim blaming. Misogyny has been everywhere. Involving women leaders and decision makers in mediation and peace process leads to more lasting and sustainable peace. Gender equality, including men stepping up and taking responsibility, is essential if you are to beat the climate emergency. Women's equal economic rights and opportunities are a global imperative if we are to build a fair globalization that works for all. Unless women play an equal role in designing digital technologies, progress on women's rights could be reversed. It is simple math. Women's participation improves institutions. The 21st century must be the century of women's equality. Let us all play our part in making it so.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome once again to all of you to the Asia-Pacific Commemoration of International Women's Day 2020 under the global theme, I Am Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights. It is now my honor to invite Ms. Amida Alicia Bana, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Executive Secretary of ESCAP, to deliver her opening remarks. Ms. Alicia Bana, please, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, distinguished representatives, generation equality change makers, colleagues, a very warm welcome to the 2020 Asia-Pacific Commemoration of International Women's Day. Today, it is my honor to host you along with colleagues from UN Women for this very important occasion. We are all gathered here to celebrate the achievements of women and girls across the region and beyond. Asia and the Pacific region has made great achievement in raising women's economic empowerment, political participation, leadership, and decision-making power. We have also witnessed remarkable progress in education and health. Furthermore, 47 countries in the region have ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, and 33 countries now have strategies on gender equality. Importantly, with the strengthening of strong legal and institutional foundations, the countries in our region have adopted progressive measures to ratify laws and regulations. Action is taken to prevent violence against women and to provide land rights. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, you may recall the Asia-Pacific Regional Review of Beijing Plus 25 that took place in Bangkok last November adopted an ambitious forward-looking declaration which strengthens the region's commitment to action on gender equality and women's empowerment. This list of emerging factors slowing the progress of gender equality and women's empowerment include: first, substantial gender gaps continue to deprive women and girls of opportunities. We continue to remain off target to achieve SDG 5 on gender equality. Worryingly, progress on some of the gender indicators has either stagnated or deteriorated over the past few years. Second, better educational outcomes and economic growth have still not translated into more and better jobs for women. Women's labor force participation rates have stagnated and even declined in some sub-regions over the past 5 years. Third, women are being disproportionately impacted due to climate change and environmental depletion, which has reduced food security and increased threats to livelihood. The natural disaster events have further increased pressures on women's time, income, health, nutrition, and social support system. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, let me highlight 3 areas of our engagement to strengthen our program's support for gender equality and women's empowerment. First, we promote women's entrepreneurship as a catalyst for advancing women's economic empowerment. Our initiatives contribute to enabling policy environments that increase women's entrepreneurs' access to finance and digital technologies. Second, encouraging women's active participation in leadership and decision-making is another of our priority. We at the UN have prepared a report that highlights key pathways to women's transformative leadership. If we strengthen women's capabilities and their access to resources, the prospect of leadership roles will be within reach for many more women in this region. Finally, high-quality, timely, and sex-disaggregated data is very crucial for informed policymaking. We support countries to design and implement evidence-based, gender-sensitive policies and programs through policy data integration tools. Going forward, we stand ready to work with UN Women and other UN agencies to realize our collective vision to leave no one behind at all levels, to push the boundaries forward for women and girls. I'm also delighted to note that this year's commemoration has been designed as an interactive dialogue with young changemakers. I'm pleased to see our younger generations picking up the baton so confidently to galvanize our collective efforts for realizing women's rights. On this International Women's Day, let us rejuvenate our efforts for a better world, realizing equal rights for women and men, girls and boys everywhere. Thank you for your attention. I wish you a very successful commemorative event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ibu Amida, for these opening remarks and for emphasizing on scaled-up actions necessary and the partnerships indeed for realizing equal rights for women and girls everywhere. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am now pleased to invite Ms. Anna-Karin Jatfors, Deputy Regional Director of UN Women Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific, to deliver her opening remarks. Ms. Jatfors, please, the floor is yours.
Ms. Armida Ali Shabana, Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and ESCAP Executive Secretary, Excellencies, members of the diplomatic community, dear UN colleagues, civil society representatives, young people, dear friends. On behalf of UN Women, I want to add my welcome and appreciation to all of you in this full room this morning as we are commemorating the International Women's Day. And this year, indeed, we celebrate under the theme of Ila Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights. And I do not believe that this theme could be any timelier in this year of 2020, where we have so many important moments that we are marking. The 25th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action, the first 5-year mark of the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, the 20th anniversary of United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, and so many more. And as we've heard from the Executive Secretary, our region has made many important strides. We see overall poverty rates going down. Rates of maternal mortality have plummeted. We have achieved or close to achieving gender parity in education in many countries. And of course, during last year's regional and national Beijing Plus 25 review process, we also saw the very strong commitments from member states and all stakeholders in the region to prioritize gender equality. But despite all of these achievements, the fact remains that not a single country in our region, or indeed around the world, can claim to have achieved gender equality. And when we look at many of the most critical areas, ending violence against women and girls, ensuring equal rights to representation and decision-making, ending harmful gender norms, having equal sharing of paid and unpaid care work, we are just not moving fast enough. We still have social norms in our region that say that unpaid care and domestic work are somehow women's chores, with the result that women on average at country level do more than 4 times as much of this work compared to men. And in some countries in our region is as much as 11 times more. Clearly, this is a huge impediment for equal access to labor markets. Violence against women remains pervasive across our region, even higher than the global rates in many parts. In some sub-regions, 3 out of every 10 women have suffered intimate partner violence in the last 12 months alone. And for those women who are at the intersection of different forms of discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity, migratory status, ethnicity, disability, and so on, the rates can be even higher. But at the same time, there are so many things that we don't know. When we look at the availability of data for gender equality across the SDG indicators, the numbers are just not there. At sub-regional level, availability of SDG gender indicators range from as low as 8% to 33%. And these gaps make it almost impossible to measure progress or to even identify trends. And they are huge barriers for evidence-based policymaking. Around the world, women and girls are increasingly impatient for change. And this is an impatience that has been growing for years. Our best has not been good enough. And this brings me to generation equality. Because in this pivotal year, this once-in-a-generation opportunity, generation equality brings together change makers from all ages and all genders to work together to finish the unfinished business of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. And as part of this campaign, later this year, UN Women will convene the Gender Equality Forum, co-hosted by the governments of Mexico and France, so appreciation to our partners from Mexico and France in working with us on co-hosting this, to bring together change makers from civil society in particular, but also governments, private sector, young people, to commit collectively to actionable, irreversible, and substantive changes for gender equality. So we are impatient, but we are also hopeful. And not only are we hopeful, but we're already seeing how women and girls are in fact already changing Asia and the Pacific. Let's look at COVID-19. In China, South Korea, and countries around the region, women are already playing an indispensable role in the fight against the outbreak. Women from all sectors, doctors, nurses, logistics and transportation staff, teachers, construction workers, journalists, volunteers, who are demonstrating outstanding professionalism and commitment in very difficult circumstances. On International Women's Day and every day of the year, we need to honor and celebrate the contributions that women make. There are many other women in our region who are driving positive changes in social norms. For example, just to mention one, Nelly in Fiji coaches under 10th grade rugby, using her skills not only to teach the sport, but to challenge gender stereotypes and to teach boys and girls critical values and skills to grow into responsible and non-violent adults. And I'm so glad that we will have the chance to hear from some more change makers here today. To conclude, I want to really appreciate all of the young people in the audience, because you're not just our future leaders, as many people often say, but you are the holders of the gender equality torch today. And it's your efforts to create a fairer world that will change the world for everyone. We know where we want to go, and we know what is needed to get there. So let us all commit ourselves on this International Women's Day to be change makers in our own families, in our own workplaces, and in our own communities and nations. Generation equality starts with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Jatfors, for your opening remarks and for shedding light on the Generation Equality Campaign and its work for supporting the realization of gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, now may I most kindly request you to turn your attention to the screens for a short video presentation.
What defines a generation? Is it just about the year you were born? Or is there something more? We may have lived through different decades, different circumstances, different countries, but we all share in the global, everyday push for our rights, for justice, for a world that is equal. Perhaps what defines our generation isn't our age or our background, but the line in the sand that we have drawn. We take to the streets to speak out against discrimination, and we work tirelessly behind the scenes. We stand up for peace.
We are fed up with the war
and economic justice. We start with a statement and watch it become a movement. We have come a long way, but the fight isn't over, and our rights are still under assault. It is time to take action. Let us be the wake-up call the world needs.
The eyes of all future generations are upon you.
Be the first, the youngest, the best, and then make sure no one is left behind. When someone tries to silence you, raise up your voice.
Let us wage a global struggle.
Change everything, or change just one thing. As long as you do something, whether you're new to changing the world or have been in the fight for a long time.
Each knows exactly why we are here.
We are all together, united for gender equality. And the future we create for women and girls is up to all of us.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to invite Ms. Jane Holloway, Social Impact Director of Dragonfly, to moderate the interactive dialogue Generation Equality Changemakers. It's also my pleasure to invite the panelists to take their seats on the stage.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning, and it is great pleasure to be sitting here with a group of young change makers. We will also have one of our speakers will be joining virtually. She's based in Afghanistan. So before we start, I'd just like to, have a quick introduction that Generation Equality, Realizing Women's Rights for an Equal Future, is a campaign that recognizes the critical role young people have and can play in this world to make a change. Young men and women, as today and tomorrow's leaders, bring to the table a consciousness of realities of gender inequalities, an understanding of its dire consequences, and a desire to be part of the solution, to be the change makers. Some of these change makers are here today, and I'm happy to introduce them to you. I think it would be best if they each introduce themselves and share a little bit about who they are. So can we start with...
Hi. Yes, okay. Hi, everyone. So grateful to be here today. So my name is Net, and I'm originally from Thailand. What I'm here today to talk about is Ila, which is a social enterprise that I co-founded. It's to really help empower women who have gone through sexual violence through a very innovative skills training program to achieve employability and hopefully become champions of our own generation so that they can impact their own communities after on. Our work right now is primarily in India, but of course the goal is to go global because this issue is not specific to one country or one region. It's really something that we collectively need to put our efforts in, and the real challenge right now is getting more men to be involved in the conversation, getting private sectors to be involved in the conversation, and that's exactly what we do through our social enterprise, which I'll explain a bit later on as well.
Hello, everyone. I'm Zach, and I founded a movement here in Thailand called #PolicyPlease, which is advocating for sexual harassment policies on campuses here in Thailand and in the region of Southeast Asia. I'm also currently starting a social enterprise, which is called Dream Tree, which is empowering LGBTQ and women who are interested in doing eco-friendly startups and businesses in this region and helping them have a platform and a network to be able to grow their businesses to do that.
Hi
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Nantanu Suvarnawut, or you can just call me Apple. I work at the Ministry of Education Special Education Bureau, responsible of the special schools all over the country and also special education centers. And I also work with the CSO and organization of persons with disabilities, and also working with the women with disabilities and girls. Okay, happy to be here.
Good morning. My name is Pirawan. My current name is Pokime. That is one kind of the flower that resilient to the climate. Actually, I used to be an admin, but right now I'm working at the Environment Program Officer to highlight the role of indigenous women in the climate change processes.
Good morning. My name is Lynn, and so last year I brought the climate strike movement in Thailand, and since then I've just been working to have more of these climate strikes, but also creating a bigger network of people creating more awareness and action about climate change. For now, I'm focusing more on storytelling and with writing and film and photography. And recently I've just started working with WWF as their communications consultant.
And then can I also introduce Sohaila Razi, who's here from Afghanistan? Hello, Sohaila. Can you please share a little bit about yourself to the audience? Let's see. Can you hear us? We may have a little bit of technical difficulties. Just bear with us for a couple more minutes. Hopefully we will be able to connect with her. If we can't connect, we may start, some of the panelists will start, I'll interview them first. We'll just give it one more try. So maybe we'll start with Connette first to share a little bit about your work in terms of how does your social enterprise empower survivors of violence?
Right. So, okay. I think I want to start off by saying that for us, what we define as sexual violence survivors are people or women specifically to begin with, who have gone through sexual abuse, sexual assault, who have been raped, or who have gone through sex trafficking. And what we do at Ila is what we like to call innovative, because we have a 360-degree approach to training. And I was explaining to these guys earlier that, skills training in itself is not that revolutionary. We're very well aware of that. But what we do is place emphasis on mental health, which is something that I think a lot of people overlook when they talk about sexual violence, because to really go from that journey of having gone through something like rape to be able to participate in the workforce again, you really need to have a mental health ally with you throughout the whole process, because you never know whenever you're going to have a moment where you have a flashback or you get triggered. So we have that as a strong component of the program. We also have more basic things like language, teaching people how to code, but what we also emphasize on is teaching soft skills and then ultimately placing them into jobs. So what we really do is place an emphasis on this idea of employability, and this is a really strong word for us because it talks about the women in terms of potential employers, employees, and contributors to the workforce, as opposed to women who have gone through such traumatic experiences. And I think this language also relates really well to private sectors, because the way that we operate is we're working with both public and private sectors to connect the dots. So how can we move these women from, who have gone from low socioeconomic backgrounds in India, which is where we're starting with, all the way to more formal sector employments, for instance, like, how do I get to be employed as a receptionist at somewhere like the Marriott? And that's what we really focus on, because for us, it's really about how can we push these girls to be more aspirational, not just, how do I tailor clothes or how do I make jewelry, but how can I really be in the workforce and contribute equally as my male counterparts. And that's basically our vision.
Thank you very much. Very inspirational. And also, how you're actually working with women to empower them, but also bring confidence to these women so that they can feel that they can engage positively in society and not feel like as a victim. Next, maybe I'll have Zach introduce his campaign a little bit, which also works with a different form of violence, maybe not as physical, but it also working on sort of sexual harassment at university. Can you please tell us a little bit about your campaign and what inspired you?
Sure. So I study journalism here in Thailand, and so basically I am supposed to listen to people for a living. And so I did that, and so we had a group in my university where we would talk with students about some of the issues that they have on campus. And one of the things which was always coming up was this issue of sexual harassment, that it was very prevalent, and also that there were no policies. And at first I didn't really believe that, so I sort of went to UN Women, and I had this great class that they did, and we were able to talk about it. But then I realized that no, there really wasn't any policies in Thailand specific for sexual harassment on campuses. So then, after we found that out, it was about how we could try to advocate for that kind of policy. So we went through the process of creating a club, a gender equality club on campus, where students could voice these things. We could do awareness events on campus. And then from there, we got signatures from students. We did videos about some of the experiences with the survivors who were willing to talk about that. And then we also went to faculty. And eventually, we presented it to the president, and he accepted, making my university the first private university in Thailand to implement sexual harassment policy. So then from there, that really inspired me, because there are so many students who were behind that and were really pushing for it, and I think that it made an impact. And so we started this gender equality club movement of trying to get more universities in Thailand to have gender equality clubs and be able to advocate for things which are coming up for them, so that students can have a voice and can say, hey, this is what's happening, and this is something that I'm passionate about. Can we make change on this? And so we work a lot with the LGBTQ community, because I think that there's not enough going on with that community in this region. And then we also work on women's issues. So I guess the main thing that we're trying to do now is do the Policy Please movement, but we're also trying to listen to the members and the students within this connection of clubs, which we'll be able to make to see if we're able to make other changes as well, which is great. And then Thammasat University also now has a club, which is in partnership with us, which is awesome. And then the last thing is the Dream Tree project, which is also just taking a step further and trying to empower women and the LGBT community to be more active and also supported in the economy, which is a big point. So thank you guys for having and listening.
Thank you, Zach. I think it's really important that we are inclusive of all genders across the spectrum, and particularly that men need to be part of this conversation as well, which I think is a real privilege that we have Zach here. It's not just a conversation about women amongst women, but it's for everyone. And on the issue of inclusivity, I'd like to introduce next for Dr. Apple to share more about what she's doing at the Ministry of Education to have more inclusivity for all.
Okay, thank you. The work that I work to lay out the policy and also work closely with the schools. For example, right now we have a project to empower the students, especially for those who are like girls, to be educated and to know their rights. And also we work with other agencies in terms of like to develop the curriculum and try to integrate the lessons on the health, reproduction, and all the trying to let them know their rights. And also, for example, like to study about the sectionality, trying to improve the accessibility of the media, learning media. For example, those who are blind or deaf, they are not able to get into the just the regular learning materials. So we are working with other agencies and also trying to develop the tutorials so that they can easily access those information, and also for those who are intellectual, and because like all of our schools under supervision, like they are the boarding schools, so they are most of the time they're staying with their teachers and the caretakers in the schools. So we are trying to educate those educational professions to know about their trying to taking care of the students, trying to get them know, because like they don't really know that when they are going to get abused. And also the same way I work with the women associations of the blind and also with other types of disabilities. We are trying to have like such a program to encourage them, trying to be able to voice their own thinking, and also so that they are able to know their rights. And also like sharing from my own experience, for example, like this is very important, trying to let them know their rights. If they, for example, in my case, whenever I travel on my own and somebody's trying to come and to escort me, and they don't really like know to do it properly, and sometimes they come like to touch on here. So normally they can touch on the back of my hand, and that's no, they are trying to help me guiding. So these are some of the examples that we have to educate to them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Apple. It's very important that we understand, the challenges that different people experience that may have different disabilities, but we are all able to contribute equally. And the next person I'd like to speak is Kun Pirawan, who is an ethnic minority from Thailand, and she will also share her perspective of working on climate and environment and with youth.
Hi again. Currently, I'm working with the Asia Indigenous People Pact. So I'm not only working for Indigenous women, but I myself is also Indigenous woman from Chiang Mai. You can call me like Pokime, as I have informed you earlier. My organization is really trying to promote the solidarity of indigenous people among in Asia, and also try to promote the recognition and protection for indigenous people rights in Asia. Because even though there are a number of countries that adopted the UN DRIP, but less still like implementing this UN DRIP in the country level. My program is the environment program, and my colleagues are men, and I'm the only woman in the program. So that's why I also have to remind my colleagues sometimes that this is the women concern, this is the women issue. So I'm not the boss, but I'm just like poking them like, you don't miss the issue of our women as well. It's not only like we are the victim, but we also provide the solution for the climate change, for the loss of biodiversity. No. So there are different things that we are doing. So basically, we are focused on the land, territory, and resources. It's very important for indigenous people. It's just not like the sort of food, our school, our home, our playgrounds, our medicine, our beliefs, our culture, and that also is the root of my identity as indigenous people. And you may wonder, like, why this is related to indigenous women. Because if I'm asking you, who provide the food in the home? Who taking care of the welfare of the family? Who are the one decide when to plant and what kind of seeds that had to plant in the such stormy year or very dry years? No? And who are protecting these natural resources? Who got killed the most? If you see the reporter from the environment defender, is women, is indigenous women who got killed the most. And we are the one who are monitoring. We go to the forest every day for the women because we need to collect the food and herbal medicine for our family. So we are also doing the part of taking care of the forest as well. So for us women, knowledge, experience, and responsibility is not lesser than men. We equally important, and we also have equal rights and responsibility as well, no, for our society. By the gender lens, culture, custom, and practices violated our rights. And that makes us to become in the difficult situation. I tell you, only being woman is already difficult. And when you become indigenous women, the situation even worsens in the different form. That's why we really have to fight for indigenous women's rights and to include them into every decision making and to highlight the role and contribution of indigenous women in all aspects. So we are saying that we are trying to make change to the society and also different strategy. So we are doing the capacity building. We believe that we are not come from zero. Everyone have capacity, but it just only need to be strengthened and need to fill up in the gap that where we're missing. We also try to support and establish the women network because we believe in the collective voice. Single voice is matter, but when it comes together, it's stronger and powerful. We also did the advocacy and lobbying because many times, even among our mainstreaming, women issue is missing when you're talking about indigenous women or even disability people or our friend from the LGBTIQ. That is missing when you come to the mainstreaming when you're talking about gender equality. And we are also doing the documentation because we also have our knowledge that we have to keep. It not only mainstream education is important for us, but traditional knowledge is also very important to us because that is helping us to maintain and taking care of the nature resources until today. You can see the researchers say 65% of the land traditionally managed and controlled by indigenous people contain 80% of the global biodiversity. So you can see like how important is that. So as I'm the woman and I'm working under environment, but I won't miss out. I will not talk only environment issue, but to mention about indigenous women, how important is our role and share responsibility equal to every man. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kun Pirawan, for sharing your personal perspective and the work that you have been doing. Next, Kun Lin, I believe you started your climate strike Thailand through Facebook as a social media, social movement. Can you explain to us and share with us a little bit more about how you engaged with the youth and a younger generation to come out to actually have a climate strike?
So I started the climate strike in Thailand last year. This was before I graduated, a little bit before that. And so it was very spontaneous. I just, created a Facebook event. I thought it was pretty easy, but it wasn't that easy. So social media has become a really, really huge, platform that I think all kinds of NGOs, businesses could use to expand a mission and especially for the younger generation. I think with the climate strike, a lot of people had wanted to do it already. I just happened to be the one creating the event. And just by that in itself had given people a platform to come together and join voices and do one common thing together. And with that, I think since then I've just been exploring more about how you can engage. Basically, for the past year, I've just been figuring out how to make people care about climate change and do something about it, and realizing that people can't care if they can't even fulfill themselves. So, environmental issues are as much social issues. You can't solve environmental issues without solving people's daily problems. People can't care about what's going to happen in 30 years if they can't even take care of today. And so I'm interested in storytelling, and so I've just been working on trying to make climate change relevant to people in communications terms. Say, just by relating climate change with every aspect of one's life and also including people in it, it makes people realize that, hey, this is not only your problem, but also you can contribute to the solution. So since then, I've just been, aside from the strikes and the protests, I've met a lot of different people, and it's just especially strong women, which I'd like to dedicate this time to, just, you know, women who work in environmental justice, you know, legal rights, or the young women from the Umgoi community in Chiang Mai right now who are fighting with this new coal proposed projects, or my small group, my team, who are all women too, which is just amazing how much, you know, different sectors can do to contribute to climate change. And I've just been working with them to see how we can bridge the gap between people who care and people who don't care, and make everyone care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, Sohaila Reza could not join us today due to a poor connection, which is very unfortunate. But what we do have that we'd like to share is a video about the work that she does, so at least that we could learn a little bit more about, you know, the work of a young change maker in Afghanistan. So please allow me to share the video.
They were beaten but stand more stable. They were killed but they appeared stronger. They are deprived of education but fight for their daughter's right to be educated. They are victims of violence just because of being a female, but it's still brave to say no to violence against women.
Inspired by Ragna's words of wisdom, education is the only solution. Therefore, we believe quality and holistic education is the key to women's empowerment. Through it, women have better access and opportunities in the workforce, leading to increased income and less isolation at home or exclusion from financial decisions. With education, women are able to live their dreams by pursuing their own goals and values.
When I was a child, I had a dream to work for women and children in my country, because I was the witness, and I saw lots of violation and discriminations against women and children in my country.
Winning the Peace Prize means that yes, I could do it. Beside all difficulties and all obstacles, I take the really important step toward my dreams and all women's dream in a society like my society. I have the energy to work harder for women participation in all of my countries and different areas of my country.
This award reaffirms the commitment and lofty dreams of Rahil and her classmates who perished in a terrorist attack on their education center in August 2018 in Kabul, that the society will overcome its current crisis by solutions drawn from the knowledge and education of its youth, the like of Rahil. Thank you, AP's Network, UNDP, and Canada for the wonderful recognition.
So it is very unfortunate, as you can see, that she wasn't able to join us, but she has been doing some very incredible work in a country where I myself have worked in before, and I understand how difficult it is for women to have a voice or to really be participating in the peace process, particularly in a conflict country. But we do have here, fortunately, we still continue to have a conversation, engaged with the youths at a table here. Next, I wanted to ask Zach more about, you have been studying journalism, and then you have started a club and started this this policy on on sexual harassment at the university. How do you think you can engage more youths to be part of this, and what sort of challenges do you see, particularly the role of men to promote gender equality?
Thank you. So we set up this space for people to be able to talk about the issues that they were passionate about, because I think that there's a lack of those kinds of spaces, first of all. Because I think that it's hard to get young people to be engaged and active with issues unless they see that there's a community of people around them who are like them, who want to see changes the same way that they do. And so creating more availability for spaces like that, where young people can come together and really talk about the issues that they care about, like climate change, like gender equality, is really important. And I think including men in those kinds of conversations and in those kind of spaces is also really important, because a lot of times, women seem to be always at the forefront of this, which totally makes sense. But it can't just be women. Like, that's not good enough. We have to have men be participating in this gender equality movement, because it can't just be that 50% of the world cares about this and that the other 50% say, yeah, okay, we care, but then they never take any action about it. So it was really important to me that we have men, and we do have men who come to those meetings every week that we have them, which is great to me. And they talk about things, and they talk about, I would say the top thing that men talk about is toxic masculinity and how they feel like they can't share their emotions and things like that. And so it was also a space for them to get out some of the things that they're feeling as well, and to see and to listen to the actual real issues that women are having. And I think, like I said, the first thing I said is that I try to listen to people. I think if we could all just listen to people a bit more, we would be a lot better off. So I think just for men, if we can just listen to women, that would be a huge step. When there's a woman who tells you that there's something wrong, believe her. And I think that would make a big difference.
Thank you. I think it's very, very important for your message. And next, I want to ask Kunnet about your experience working with survivors of violence. How do you feel you can engage with a younger generation to be part of the solution? And also, what sort of role do you think men have in the work that you do as well?
Right. So I spoke a bit earlier about how Ila is a social enterprise. So the work that we engage on a social level with sexual violence survivors is pretty straightforward. We work with them through skills training to get them into financial independence through various work placements. But on the enterprise side, on the business side, we work with corporations, because I personally feel very strongly that businesses need to be way more engaged in the Sustainable Development Goals, especially gender equality, which, fun fact, is one of the lowest ranking ones as of now. But I think that means that there's so much room for opportunity and so much room for people to get involved. I'll speak specific to India, which is where Ila is operating. So another fun fact is India is the only country in the world right now which has a 2% CSR law, which means that certain countries, certain companies, sorry, that have a certain profit margin, who reach a certain number of profits, needs to donate 2% of that profit to CSR causes. And I think I'm probably the only person under 30 who thinks this is so cool, because it means that you can have so much room for innovative solutions, not just, donating money or doing one-time kind of activities. But what Ila does, our role is we work with companies through an innovative employee engagement program. And what happens is we work really closely with the young people, the young millennials in these businesses, to really engage them through a skills volunteering program. And this is something that Ila has developed. We have our own employee engagement curriculum, which we're working with HR companies, with various consulting companies, to make sure that these are the soft skills that people need to really become employable. And so I'll take something like public speaking, for instance, or conflict management. This is something that we all who work in corporations definitely needs. Like, you deal with this every single day, whether you have a problem with your colleague or you have a problem with your boss. But it is something that also survivors need to learn. These soft skills are something that they will probably need to use if they're going to be working, again, in like a reception area of a hotel, for instance. And I'm sure a lot of people in corporations are aware of how you identify high potentials, right, in businesses. Well, that's what we're doing for survivors. We're identifying who are the high potentials that we can really make more employable and work as equally as men in the workforce. So that's how we engage young people through businesses. So, whether that's you're in your 20s, you're starting out, you're a fresh grad, or you're in your 30s, mid-career, you can engage in the employee engagement program by volunteering your skill sets to these survivors who need them just as much as you need them. And in doing so, you're automatically encountering things like how to de-break gender bias, how to talk about survivors, and how to think about things like diversity and inclusion, which I know is just so hot and trending in businesses nowadays. Lots of people talk about diversity, which is a lot easier, in my opinion, to measure, right? Like, you can have 50-50 on the board, like Unilever just came out with that. But how is it that you measure inclusivity? Like, this is a lot of gray areas for people, and I think this is what Ila brings to the table. And then just real quick on the other aspect of what Ila does through young people is we have a global network of what we call the Ila Generation. I like to say we came up with this before UN Women came up with generation equality, but we came up with Ila Generation, which is basically how to engage young people, young socially conscious millennials, like Zach was saying, creating these spaces to engage them. And now we have about over almost 1,000 people in over 20 countries who are involved in Ila Generation and really believe in like what we do and how to talk about gender in a cool way. Because I don't know how else to put it, but I think that gender should be just as cool as going to the movies or, now climate strike and stuff like that. So that's my vision.
Thank you very much. I think it's really, really important, when you talk about inclusivity, it's also about including everyone in society, and particularly the businesses, and how they can, find women to be employable, or people who are survivors. Quite often, a lot of development programs, they focus very much on how can women, start up their own businesses, or how can they be self-sustaining. But quite often, many people, or many women, they're more comfortable actually having jobs that are, they know at the end of the month they'll get a certain amount of money. That's more stability for them. And I think that's really important, to engage them and have, diverse opportunities for employment. So next, I wanted to ask, again, back to Lynn, since the last conversation was on climate change and climate action, is how do you think you can engage a younger generation to be part of the solution, or why do you think a younger generation are more interested in talking about the environment and making a change?
So again, just going back to the social media platforms, what I've been trying to do is basically just mainstreaming climate change. And with climate change, other environmental issues or social issues, I think there's a big gap between NGOs or individuals who work towards solving it and people who simply don't care. There's a big gap just in language, if you want to reach a wider group of audience, you have to reach into what's trending on Twitter right now, or what kinds of influencers Thai people like, or young people in other countries. You can't simply just push on the saying climate change, we're all going to die in a few years, because people don't listen to that. They have way too many distracting things to care about, and so with that, I've just been. For myself, I like storytelling. I like to learn writing, film, photography, and so I've been trying to make some short films or just do things in my own way to create action for climate change. But what what I'm trying to do too is just to encourage other youth and say that, hey, look, environmental issues are basically you have to solve these social issues. And that meaning, regardless of what profession you work on, what field that you're interested in, whether you want to be a chef or work in sustainability or be an athlete and so on, or a landscape architect, you can all contribute to climate change, climate solutions. And that makes, acting on climate more inclusive, more open to all kinds of people. They don't necessarily have to be working with the environment, and that opens it up to more people. And saying that, I think also with the new in this era of like information and internet and social media, especially the youth who consume so much of it, we're very scared. I think people my age and even adults, it's a bit of a discouraging time for us because you see so much bad news out in the world. But this kind of mindset that I've grown to have is basically, I don't know if the world's going to end, if we're going to solve climate change or not. But it's mattered less to me now because it's like there's no harm in trying in any way you can. And knowing that what you love to do, whatever career you want to pursue, that can also contribute to the solution. So I'm just trying to create more of that awareness and expand that solutions-based approach to more people, get them involved, and whether young or old, women or men, yeah.
Thank you. So now we've heard from sort of young change makers on what they're doing at more of on the grounds level and sort of the social enterprises they started. Next, I'd like to ask Dr. Apple, who's working with the government, more on the policy side of how do you think we can better engage with differently abled persons to ensure their inclusiveness. And what are some of the challenges that you think that are being faced, particularly for the younger generation?
Yes, of course. Thank you. As for the policy level, I think now it's all set, especially in terms of regarding the persons with disabilities and the involvement of the work and there are but. Anyway, there are lots of the things that for the implementations that we need to still like a big gap between the policy and implementations. Like we need to get awareness from the society to be aware or to be knowledgeable about how to get involved or to think about the person with disabilities, especially for the women and the girls, because like anyway, we are still in the same society, and also first we have to, since we have to be in. We have to live in the same society, so they need to be educated, and also at the same time they have to open an opportunities, and if there is any policies, they need to think about us, for example, like in terms of the access to justice, for example, if they have the court to be accessible, there is like, for example, in case of the deaf woman, they have been raped and they got lots of the violence, like abusement, and they got into the court and they were convicted to even to convict the crime, but actually she is the victim is herself, and she cannot even like communicate to the judges on her own. So this is the thing that we need to be taking care of, like to provide the very accessible way of communication for them. This is the thing that we need to advocate to the society, and also on the side of the persons or the women and girls with disabilities, as I stated earlier, that they should know about their rights. They should know when it's considered to be abused or to get like harassed by other people, so they can even like at least to protect on their own rights. And of course, since they are knowledgeable and they know how to deal with themselves. And also the last thing that I want to emphasize here, to get them like to work together, get them to get involved with the organizations, like the capacity building of the people, of the either like in the form of the CSO or the organizations of persons with disabilities themselves, since it would become like stronger in whenever they want to advocate for themselves. And of course, they are the one who knows the problem the best. And at the same time, we need, as I stated, since the society is now opened and also the people with disabilities are educated, I think they would get immersed and to stay and together and to solve any problem. Is that what my strategy is?
Thank you very much. It's very inspirational and I think really educational for all of us to particularly have you here and share as what are the difficulties and challenges that people with disabilities may face, and for us to always be considerate as well when we think of policies and how do we best implement for inclusivity. So my last question will actually be with Kun Pirawan. How can we better support Indigenous women to be change makers in the context in which they live?
Before I coming here, I was thinking what will be my recommendation to my audience here, since they have chance, influential, more opportunity than me. So if I got only one shot, what will be my message to you to multiply and helping support Indigenous women? The first thing I was thinking, I'm not sure anyone have ever heard, I'm tired of your saliva. I want to taste your sweat. So that means I'm tired of your talking, no? Like blah, blah, recommendation, promises. We need action right now. We cannot wait anything anymore. Women rights, child rights, any rights for us. If you're thinking about your future generation, you have to take action from now on, no? So we cannot wait. We need your action and my action as well. We believe that if only our rights recognition only is not enough, no? So we need more than that for the implementation. And then we also have to monitoring whether this implemented effectively or not. So this one, we need everyone to help each other. There are so many recommendations about women, Indigenous women, and other groups in human rights mechanism, or in environment, or even SDG. 1,000, you can read that. So Just make sure that those recommendations will be implementing. That will be good for us. Secondly, capacity building still need to be continued because that we believe knowledge is a power, and those investments will remain with that person or the community, and they can improve on that. For me, it's not easy to come here to talk to you in English. I failed English many times. But today I have to talk to you in English. I have to study my own current language, and then I have to learn in Thai, and then I have to learn ABCD when I was grade 5. Even my teacher cannot talk to foreigner, but now the student have to talk with foreigner today. So education is very important, and everyone should access to free education. I don't have money to pay for the tuition fee, no. Even my indigenous people, women, they cannot. So this have to be in the policy as well to make us to be equally to everyone. Number 3 is about livelihood improvement. When I talk about it, many times we indigenous people, we talk about rights, human rights, women's rights, everything, but we forgot to talk about rice, what we eat every day. Without your stomach fulfilling, it's difficult to go and yelling and fighting, no, with different level. So this has to come together. When I talk about livelihood, it's not limited to the economic development where we are talking right now. Plantation, monocropping, whatever business. We want sustainable economy where respect human rights and nature. And that is what indigenous people have been doing, but it was not recognized. Number of times we were criminalized, we were killing because of lack of this respect on the human rights. So we have to promote both rights and rights. No. Number 4, I want to ensure the space and opportunity for indigenous women and also young indigenous women, because no one live forever. You need young generation to continue the work, and they even do better than we are doing right now. For me, if the UN not invite me or provide the flight ticket, I may have to walk. I mean, those support also needed. No, it's just not only you said we give space for you, but how can I come? I have to walk. Or how many days to come here or go to the UN in US? We need resources. No, so we have to make sure that this has to be efficient, and the representative of women should be there. No, should not miss out anyone. If you say no one left behind, then it's not women also should not left behind. Lastly, I will focus on partnership and network. In Thai, proverb they say like, คนเดียวหัวหาย2 คนเพื่อนตาย. That means one head, your head gone, or if 2 นี่ you secure. So that means in terms of the teamwork, we cannot work alone. We have to work together. Because you are able to, everyone, you access to different things, and you holding different knowledge, skill. That's why we need partnership. We don't want you to see us only beneficiary, marginalized group, but we want you to see us as a partnership, as a friend. We contributing together in different level and different way where we are. So let's work together and try to engage indigenous women with you. Thank you.
I'd like to thank all of our speakers here today for really contributing and sharing with us their experience and their opinions and what they would like to share and contribute further. What I do have a little bit of time for is to open the floor for, I would say, 2 or 3 questions from the audience. Can I ask you to keep your questions quite short and also be quite specific at who you'd like to direct the question to be answered from? So do I have any volunteers? Yes.
Thank you. Just a very brief question to Kunet. We're talking about victim. It means we need the first target also the family of the victim. Do you provide any support to those families to deal with maybe the children or part of the family support? Thank you.
Hi, yes. In short, no, we don't. But the reason we don't is because we're very strategic in the kind of beneficiaries that we're helping. Because I feel that with my experience, we've seen a lot of training programs, for instance, where a company or a school or an NGO or a social enterprise helps, let's say, 5,000, 10,000 kids through education. But then if you look at like the real numbers of impact and how many of those actually get jobs, it's like, 10% or something like that. So what we're focusing on is a very small amount of people who, again, I refer to as high potentials. We provide them with all the resources that they need and really help them to that place of jobs and internships. And we're hoping to get about like 90% of trainees placed into jobs or internships. But of course, I understand that because a survivor does not just rely on herself. It's a whole network. We work very, very closely with our partner organizations. We have about 4 or 5 NGOs in our network who we work with to recruit the girls. They themselves are the NGOs or the shelters or the rehabilitation places that actually house the girls and provide them with the support and accommodation and any other assistance that they or their family might need. So in this sense, we do a very thorough screening of the people we partner with and the network because we want to make sure that our whole supply chain, if you will, is very ethical.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yes, the lady in front.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the session and for everybody for sharing your background information. I just had a little question because I also am part of a Bangkok Rising community where we voice women's rights and women who've been sexually harassed. We do flash mobs and then we do monologue as well to voice women. We had some women reaching out to us asking us for assistance, and we were only able to advise them to reach out. In Thailand, I know that Kun Ying Pavina had some hotline to reach out to, and that was what we recommended. But a lot of them said they want waiting lists or they couldn't reach out, so I'm not sure if there's any kind of best practices or any platform that there's a number here that they can reach out to, or if how we can support women who reach out to us for such kind of support, or how we can direct them to the best field that we can. Thank you.
Maybe I'm not sure if our panelists here would be the right ones to answer this question, but maybe I could direct it at UN Women, maybe, or can share this after when we have the break for the refreshments. But I think it's a very good question and a very relevant question as well. Thank you. Is there any more questions? I will have time for one more. Yes, the gentleman in the back.
I'm a journalist for the Bangkok Post, so I would like to ask Ms. Pirawan, to what extent do you think the language remain a barrier, remain an obstacle to realizing human rights? Because officials often use official language when they try to communicate with ethnic minorities, and that can prevent you from realizing human rights. Thank you.
Okay, I just give you example. To access to justice for indigenous people is also difficult when it comes to language, because we do not have the interpreter, those who can speak, because not every indigenous people, the most indigenous women who access to education. So to learn another language is also still challenging. Even the school we have in the community, the teacher come only like once a week or once a month. And when it's rainy season, you may not see at all your teacher. So maybe we have to produce the local teacher who can be in the community and also sensitize to the people culture. We also need to keep our language because our language is our identity. That we also continue, and that is what we are doing in the community. But it would be good if our government also support those kind of optional alternative education for the people to live and survive. And another thing, just example, when you go to the hospital, it's also difficult to talk with the medic people or the nurses because they don't understand our current or other language. This, this is just the example of our language barrier where you cannot even access to the basic rights. And it's so difficult to demand to the right when you cannot speak. And sometimes you even not recognized as the citizenship of the country because you cannot even speak Thai. So I think we have to recognize the diversity of the people, that Thai doesn't mean only who can speak Thai, because we have diverse culture, language, and that make our country strong. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I don't have any more time for any more questions, but we do have a refreshments light reception after this that I'm sure that if you do have any more questions, you can ask our speakers or even UN Women or UNDP that are here. So in closing for my session now, I'd like to ask everyone to give a big round of applause to our young change makers. Thank you.
Thank you to our excellent moderator, our inspiring speakers, and the distinguished audience here today for your active participation in this Asia-Pacific commemoration of International Women's Day 2020. Now, if I may please invite Mr. Renu Meyer, UNDP representative in Thailand, on behalf of the UN country team, and in his capacity as the co-chair of the UN country team's gender theme group, to deliver the closing remarks.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. No, not quite yet. Good morning still to all of you. A pleasure to joining this very diverse group of participants. And I must say that I do not want to follow my script, generously and kindly prepared by my colleagues after this very eloquent panel and your interventions, because I would be afraid of being accused of I'm hearing voices telling me that you're sick of my saliva and you want, and now that you want my sweat, which I will also not give you because that could be very profusing. So, but I did not know this expression, but for sure I will try to bring it in as part of the UN jargon to refresh it a little bit. Of course, I could again, and I'm sure Abu Armida and my colleague Anna Karine have again underlined how important, maybe more important than usual, this year's commemoration of the International UN Women's Day is important in light of the anniversaries of the Beijing Declaration Platform for Action, anniversary of the UN Security Council on Peace, Women and Security here in Thailand, anniversary of the 5th year of the Gender Equality Act, but also to go towards action and not just commemoration, also the 5th year of the Agenda 2030, and this very, very loud call from our UN Secretary General to enter 2020 and the new decade of action. So I think we got the message very powerfully from the speakers on the panel, and they've shared with us some very inspiring commitments. And what I really liked about it, and we were discussing it with Anna Karine, is how it's not just gender per se, it's always an integration of gender and women's rights linked to other issues that are compelling to us today. And it doesn't take much to turn on the radio in the morning or open the newspaper, to switch on our laptops and our tablets to be inundated by this information. And as you rightly say, they're not very rosy these days, right? But clearly, just like parity in everything, women share both the negative consequences of those actions, but certainly, and I'm absolutely convinced that they probably have within them, if not more, at least 50% of the solutions to the problems that we are facing. I did want, however, to still, because maybe saliva is not that great, but research and bringing evidence and information to people to inform their action is still very important. And I'd like to draw your attention on a study that my organization, UNDP, published just last week on an issue that to me is still extremely important, because we can have, as you mentioned, laws and declarations and political commitments, but if we don't reach people's mindsets, it's going to be very, very difficult to see any change happen. And when we talk about mindset, we obviously talk about gender bias. Right? And there's this UNDP publication published last week on a gender bias index that I would really suggest that all of us go and check, not only read, because you'll be, I'm sure, just like me, stunned by the bad news. And I will just use one statistics is apparently from the survey that was done and the research. It shows that 91% of men, and which was even more staggering to me, 86% of women globally show at least one clear bias against gender equality in areas such as politics, economics, education, and physical integrity. So clearly, those numbers, are loud and clear. Now, there's also, together with the report, a very interesting little instrument that I would really invite you to take. It's a hashtag Check Your Bias. It is a small survey, and just by clicking on what you feel closer to in terms of the question and the various answers offered, it will reveal what, according to the methodology, would be your own personal bias. Once you've done this, and being much aware that, as reminded by our colleague from the Karen community, we also have a right to rice. So I don't want to talk forever, but I will finish by simply saying that if you, like me, are not happy with the result that you will receive from this gender bias survey, move to sweat, move to action. Enter the decade of action with all the UN. And just like we did in the UN family, and I have the pleasure of co-chairing with UN Women the UN Gender Theme Group, and we look both at internally and externally how we can further push on gender parity, I would like you to simply say two things. Your name, and that you're going to be part of generation equality. So in front of all of you, here I go. My name is Renaud Meyer, and I'm Generation Equality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer, for these inspiring closing remarks and for letting us know about the recently published study, UNDP study on gender bias. Excellencies, panelists, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. This marks the end of the Asia-Pacific Commemoration of International Women's Day 2020. We would like to invite you just outside this meeting room for some refreshments, and thank you very much for your participation today.
Yeah, just say, stand, maybe stand in front, everyone. I'll ask.
Take a photo of the, yes, that's coming. Oh, they are coming. Oh, they are coming for the photo? Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, sure. I think there's a